Sorry guys, I gotta get my camera on. Hang on, there's probably an echo too. This is annoying. Give me 1 sec. That was annoying. Sorry about that. I'm running super late today. I am sorry, but it's good to be here. Good morning, all. Welcome to today's show. Welcome to you. Welcome to a beautiful world. Monday, October 18th. I'm assuming you guys can hear me okay. Sorry, I really gotta not fuck around in the morning. I'm gonna trust you guys can hear me okay and just go for it. Today I wanted to talk about the maths of God. In order to do that, I need to show you this. So let's do that. Let's find my mouse and click on this guy. And let's see what this doodle has to say.
My choice, it's all about me. Well, for those who are anti-vaxxers, those who seem to think, well, it's my body, my choice, it's all about me. Well, how does that look before God? That's selfish. That's not thinking about anyone else. We're in this predicament at the moment because we see in the north how many have not been vaccinated, and because of that, we're closed. We're shut. The people who rely on coming together for spiritual nourishment, to hear the word of God, to receive bodily Jesus, not just spiritually, because people make choices. People make choices for themselves, not thinking about, well, what's the greater good? Is my life just about myself, or should I be thinking about everyone around me? So it's always about making a decision that affects everyone else, not just ourselves. And so to all of you who are anti-vaxxers, who are watching this morning, please, just to be thinking about yourself. Whatever you have read online, whatever those conspiracy theories, how many millions upon millions upon millions of us have been vaccinated? There are those who say, well, God has told me not to be vaccinated. Well, has God told the bishop and all the priests in this diocese and all the priests across this country and this world not to be vaccinated or to be vaccinated? Does God only listen to you and tell you things and not tell the rest of us? I said, really? What God wants is for the community to be gathered in prayer. In order for the community to be gathered in prayer, we need to be vaccinated. We need to care for one another. Caring for one another means whatever I think is my idea, I must put that to the side. Like everything else we do in life. It's not about me, it's about the community.
Oh, God bless you all. Now look, the key to God, if you want to be God full of God, you've got to abandon yourself. Do you hear me? You've got to tell every single urge, every single thought, every single wisdom, every single intuition, every single thing that God tells you is wrong. It's the World Health Organization is the instrument of God. And if you do not obey the instrument, this ministry of health, then you are going to burn in hell for the rest of your life, right? It's powerful. It's why and who I am. I became this way at Signal Mountain Baptist Church because I first saw this thing coming into the world. This philosophical attack. And when you listen to it, right now when I listen to it, it just sounds absurd. But I know when I was 12, I know when I was 7, I know when I was 8, I know when I was 9. I know every single year that I heard this growing up, how difficult it was to try and overcome this idea that God wants me to be selfless. That God wants me to do what this preacher's saying and literally reject the entire core of my being in exchange for the gifts and the lack of punishment from this omniscient creature who was only giving me cues through the World Health Organization or through Caesar or through democracy or through Zionism. That this idea that even though they're killing children, even though they're bulldozing down every single house that they could find in Palestine, that none of that matters because God wants this to happen. And if you do not want this to happen, you are a problem. And that has shaped me. It has literally made me who I am today. It made me abandon all my thoughts of being a lawyer, of being working in government, of wanting to be a good, noble veteran, of wanting to participate in this society in such a positive way that people would even give me acolytes or recognition for my contribution to work. It made me abandon all of that and rethink my entire position on God. My first year in college, I was a political science major with a fascination with astronomy. I couldn't figure out a way to do both. And after that first year, after taking my first philosophy class and realizing, holy fuck, there's a science where people actually get to think about this stuff, changed me forever. I wasn't even capable of following that St. Elmo's fire delusion of Georgetown, of whatever magical idea I had in my mind about what life would be like growing up. And I just had to dig. And you keep digging and digging and digging because you want to know what the fuck's right. Am I truly supposed to be selfless and listen to the World Health Organization? Does that make me a good Christian? Does that make me kind in God's eyes to live that way? And if you're not even, if you've never even been attached to religion, with theism even, the question still remains. Does my Creator endow me with certain inalienable thoughts? Or am I fully corrupted by this magical, mystical, invisible, evil demon in the world that wants me to be selfish? That wants me to discern things and create evil in the world by discernment? That by me, this is the idea this preacher's telling you, that by you having these thoughts and investigating these ideas and looking at the world using the instruments of doubt, that you are committing heresy, that you are standing against God Himself. And this has always been a primal argument used to discipline the spiritual growing up, used to discipline anyone at all who spent every year in their schooling avoiding morals. That morals and ethics are never taught in school because if they were to do that, it would undo and unhinge every single piece, every barnacle that they've shoved on your hull from the moment you entered that institution. And that I stumbled into philosophy out of luck. That it was a prerequisite that I had to take in order to be pre-law, and one of those happened to be philosophy, and the professor fucking melted my mind. Not only did he melt my mind, he told me it was okay. that this idea of exploration was actually God-full. That philosophia, the love of wisdom, philosophia is the path of God. And that anyone who participates in this idea of trying to understand God, of trying to understand your role in this transaction that brought you here, would be the modern day pilgrimage, the Mecca in your heart, the what is that path? The Spanish path, right? St. Louis Obispo. I don't know. The trek that we take to find that Hajj, that pilgrimage, the pilgrimage of truth, hiking the Appalachian Trail. While you're out there, you're thinking about God. You're thinking about your existence. You're thinking about everything. The entire matrix is on the line because you're dedicating the freeness of your mind to contemplate these things. But you can't if you're listening to the shit. You can't. You can't do it. That this guy is telling you that he understands spirituality more than anyone else does, and that spirituality lies in the dedication and consecration of Caesar, of government. It's not even government. It's of culture. It's of fashion. And as you're watching what's happening, I have 7 days of restriction, by the way. 50-year-old man who's on restriction from YouTube. If I last 7 days, I'm allowed to speak to you again. If I can last 7 days, you are allowed to listen to ideas I have and consider them for yourself. That this same fight for philosophy, this exact same battle that we have to have free fucking thought, has been normalized. It's built into society itself. And we call this regular. And we pretend that it's this outer force that's doing it. Oh, it's them doing it, but it's us. We do this to each other. And no matter how many times I say that, people don't want to hear that we do that. They want to hear someone else does that to them. Just like this preacher wants you to hear that it's someone else who's wrong, and that someone else is listening to made-up fantasy stories, and they're doing that to leave God. That's this position. Is it you going out on your own into the wilderness? What did Jesus do? That you left the Pharaoh, left the pyramid city to go out and give yourself 40 days of isolation for thought. And that by you leaving this camp, leaving this reservation, that you were now Satan, says this man. That you were evil because you're selfish. And to go into the wilderness, my friends, requires the self. You find yourself in the wilderness. You do not lose yourself. A Native American boy will not go on a vision quest, so he will return to the village selfless. Most of the time, he's thrown out because he lacks self, and he must find it, or else the tribe will fall. This idea of selflessness stitched into Christianity is why so many of us accept, perpetrate, position, and help mandate this system all around us while insisting that we're the victims of it. While insisting that we are the ones that are victimized by this very system when we're the ones arming it, giving it more bullets every day. And all of it, every single weakness, every single fortification, I should say, that's causing this damage on you, comes down to your cosmology of God, to your relationship of God, and to your delegation of what God means to someone else, to anyone else except for you. How in the world can you have an intimate relationship with God by asking someone else to tell you? I would say to you that the very, very the only absolute that you could ever have in a relationship like that, where you were getting your tenets of how you react to God from someone else, the only absolute you will have at the end of the day, no matter what you do, is the lack of relationship with God. It's the only one. Colin Powell died yesterday, today, I don't know. No matter what president, no matter what administration, he was always in charge of your immune system. Your domestic terrorist immune system was installed, created, and thrived under Colin Powell. This man died fully vaccinated. He died from complications of COVID, says the mainstream news. Fully vaccinated. You are going to need faith to believe all of these things that are being told to you. You are going to need a special kind of faith. It's blind obedience dressed in a white coat. It's got a nice tie on because it wants you to call it faith. And if you dress that whore up enough, if you dress obedience up enough, if you put enough lipstick on that pig, she will sell. That you will call that faith. That you will call that, well, I believe. And you don't believe, you obediate. You obediate. You secrete the chemical of obedience. And we build our entire society on it. What do you think asymptomatic truly means, my friends? When you look at the definition of that word, it's literally impossible to relate that to the word disease. Those two words cannot exist next to each other, but we've built an entire corporation underneath a conglomeration, underneath a preservation of this mythos that we've called religion. We've turned it into a religion. And the tenets of this religion are: you will be selfless, you will fear an invisible force that's not there in the world, you will either call it Satan, Lucifer, the Freemasons, terrorists, the Hottentots, the Nazis, the Navajos. You will call it whatever you need. But you will fear this invisible force outside yourself, and you will use that fear, you will exchange that fear and alchemize it into obedience for this fucking system. And you will raise your kids on this system. And your kids will raise their kids on this system. And you will send your system to find others and recruit them. You will have a crusade of your system where you insist the only way you can help anyone is to go out and shove a fucking needle in them and insist that what they do not know, what they do not understand, and what they do not believe and what they do not accept is simply Satan. Is simply this evil force that's just causing you to misdirect your selflessness. And that the exact same tenets that this guy is teaching are taught to you by Colin Powell. Thank you for your service. Oh my God, you kept us safe for so long, Colin. Thank you so much. That you inherit this debt, this same lifeblood debt that was installed to you by this fucker is given to you by your government. There's a dude who you don't know who sacrificed his life when you weren't looking and fucking had himself destroyed and killed so you could live here for free, so you could sit here and be all selfish and shit. And it starts to wear away at you, unless you're Tim like me and like, what the fuck did you just say? And you're asking these questions and you can't stop. You can't stop, not because you're smart, not because you're strong. You can't stop because you can't take the pain of trying to understand how the fuck these two things can work. How these two completely different ideas can exist, and that all these tall people who I used to think were adults are believing it. And the entire time you're supposed to have respect for authority, but you don't see authority. You see obedience. You see secreted abandonment and obedience. And you're supposed to give your authority to that. You're supposed to call that selflessness hero. You're supposed to build your whole life around it. And here we are paying taxes every day. We're going into this system because of how expensive it is to turn around. And you know who keeps us here? It's not the evil ones. It's the good ones. It's the ones that have formed these pockets. They're not forming these pockets to fix society. They're forming these pockets to feel better about what's happening. And the biggest two of these pockets would be Democrats and Republicans. Veterans. Alumni. That's a biggie. To be an alumni is to believe in the system, to even call yourself that. To accept its positions, its gifts, all of that. To even have that false security you get by saying, well, that guy's Luciferian, but all of us aren't. We're magically good. And you start to unwrap this stuff and you do the math and you ask people to do the math and they don't want to do the math, which is why the system exists. This system is not run by evil Luciferians. This system is run by people who believe in evil Luciferians. Oh, James, I'm tired of you talking about this shit. Jesus, man, will you just shut up about that? No, I can't, because that's what's happening right now. That is the system that we have in place right now.
For those who are anti-vaxxers.
How am I not supposed to talk about it? Why should I not talk about it is an even better discussion. How do I get this to I just got to go here. That this system has a built-in force field that keeps us inside. I got this comment yesterday. This is from Painted Videos. I do want to ask about evil. Why do you say that it doesn't exist? What about all victims sharing their stories? The council, Firsthand, how Freeman said the Masons coming out of the lodge after a ritual just have different eyes. How about that? Okay, we'll start with that. The Masons coming out of a lodge have different eyes. Church people coming out of church have different eyes. People coming out of their job at night have different eyes. People who wake up in the morning have different eyes. People who have just been told, I love you, have different eyes. All of us change. As much as I like Freeman, I don't have to agree with this. I don't have to believe that behind the Freemason, where they're talking about, hey, let's stop traffic this weekend and have a Shriners thing, we'll all wear fez hats and collect money at the red light, that's not your Luciferian. That you want to call them Luciferian because you know that's a meeting that you're not going to go to. It's a meeting that has some ritualistic secrecy around it. So therefore, you get to put whatever you need to put in there. And you're going to find a place to dump your trash because this is a giant fucking Alice's Restaurant song and the dump's closed. And your energy, your product energy, your own responsibility for who the fuck you are, you have to get rid of it so you find someone else to say you're the evil Luciferian. And why does that work? Because people want to hear that. Most of the people that watch TV, that watch YouTube, are looking for escape. My numbers are low because I do not offer escape. I offer piercing observation. It's not even truth, is it? I offer piercing witness. It's a better word for it. And that we're not here to have piercing witness. We want to lose ourselves at the idea. And we will look for ideas that help us lose ourselves. And this idea that there are Freemasons that have different eyes when they come out is how you lose yourself. And you don't have to be responsible anymore because now a worldwide conglomerate called the Freemasons is controlling everything and they're here to torture you. And now you get to create a whole new reality out of those crumbs. You could build a giant crumb cake and create an entire tribe around it where each of you are defining yourselves by how well you can point at a Luciferian. You saw the same thing with QAnon. James, underneath that island, 6-story elevator that goes all the way down. That's where they're ripping the faces off kids. They covered it in concrete, so we'll never know. But it was there, James. We'll never know, but it was there. That's the kind of faith that you will create for yourself in order to feel better. Well, James, I didn't buy into that. Well, you bought into other stuff too. I know you did, Holmes. I did too. We all do. Even if you're buying into the system, you're still buying into these things. So this whole contest about who didn't buy into what the most, even that offers a little bit of psychopathy. Because if you made it through this entire thing and you didn't buy into anything, it means that you've been devoid of having any humanity in you at all. And that's not self-full, that's not selfless, that's self. It's before there is self. It's no self, but it's before it even happened. It's a petrified apathy that doesn't even leave the starting line. The gun goes off and it just sits there like a pile of horse shit dumped right before a run. It's just sitting there. So that's no better, is it? And when you start to look at this, you realize there's no way to win this. That there's a jockey on my fucking back who's whipping the shit out of me, and it doesn't matter how fast I run, he's going to whip me anyway. And this whole thing is making you rethink your arithmetic of God. And most of you will simply stop and say, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing that math. Fuck that. Why do math when I can listen to this guy? Look at his vestments. Look at how prime his vestments are. We say, why do you say it doesn't exist? I say that evil as a noun doesn't exist. I say this idea that you have in your mind that there's a perfected evil out there that's running the show and using its perfection of evil to do evil is hypothetically impossible. The math does not check out. That the same kind of logic is used to sell you asymptomatic. And if you're going to buy this math, you're going to have to buy the asymptomatic math too. That evil is an adjective. That evil is the lack of self, not the fullness of self. And as long as you believe that there's someone who's so full of themselves that they are the Luciferian king and they're running all this and all of us as victims, you are ignoring your own contribution to this system. I don't contribute. I'm here fighting it every day. Yeah, that's my whole point. Everyone is doing that. Everyone. That there's not everyone except for these one secret club who meets under darkness. It's not that way. That what you see around you is homogeny, which means it exists everywhere. It's the beautiful thing about nature. There's not one place in nature where a crow exists, but nowhere else there's crows. That this archetype of crow is known wherever you go because nature has it saturated into its formula. Cosmic homogeny has always been proven true on every single level. If you're looking in the sky, if you're looking in the micro, you're seeing the same patterns expressed all over the place. So where is this Luciferian evil in your neighborhood? Where is it in your city? Find it for me. Type it in the comments. Tell me, here it is. That this is the source. And once we distinguish that and we run it through the committee and we decide, yes, that's clearly the source of evil, we will string it up together and we will burn it at the stake like a witch. Oh, wait, we've already done that. That didn't work either. In fact, if anything, it showed who was truly the evil one was probably the Witchfinder General. The people going around encouraging and paying the Witchfinder General. Please come to our town and eliminate our terrorism, please. Yeah, if the terrorism is caused by a lady with too many cats, great. Let's burn her so we get this thing taken care of. Because I'm not evil, it's them. They're the evil. And that's the kind of blind motor that runs our society as a whole. It's why we even have to have government. If people stop believing that, government would become not a necessity, not a commodity, but this weird, frilly fetish certain people have who hate jungle, who hate life itself. And what is God but the giver of this life? That this entire natural system that we have probably came from God. And all we've done is bastardized and built a fort around it and gone in that fort and claimed God doesn't speak through us. he speaks through this book written long ago. And he who doth not obeyeth, the world healtheth, scriptureth, is therefore have a lispeth, as they pronounce the thing this, like thitheth. You end up with the same kind of motor. The same kind. What about trafficking and abuse, James? Isn't that evil? Of course it's evil. Of course it is. And you probably have believed these ideas that there's this giant Luciferian underground organization trafficking children. And guess what? Society traffics their own children. Society sends their own children off to thought school. It's compulsory. From first grade on through 12th grade, there's a separation. The parents abandon their children to this system. They human traffic them and sell them as tax assets. And parents check off their property on their tax form. And that is human trafficking, but we're going to magically say that doesn't count. That none of the trafficking we do counts, but all of the trafficking in the oil containers, where there's 5 stories underground that's been concreted over, none of us can prove it, that's real trafficking. Do you see what that does psychologically? It allows you to traffic your kids more under the auspice that you're not the evil Luciferians trafficking out there. It allows you to buy more of the propaganda because you have created a hypothetical demon, a hypothetical evil one, to override the actual evil that's actually happening all around you. But these Luciferians, they have these rituals where they strip a child naked and put them on a table and take knives and cut them up and enjoy the beautiful feelings they get by mutilation. And you're talking about circumcision. You are talking about a ritual that happens right now, right? Because if every second a child's born, that means every other second, a boy's having his genitals removed, naked on a table, as a Luciferian looks over him and laughs maniacally. Ha 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 ha! But that doesn't count because you have this idea of this Luciferian in a suit who's riding this oil tanker and selling children around after he rips their face off and cannibalizes them because of how perfectly evil he is. And I'm telling you, that's a fantasy. It's the same fantasy you get when you go to a horror movie, right? And watch Jason. You're not worried about cancer. You're not worried about terrorism. You're not worried about Zionism. You're not worried about what our government's doing. You're not worrying about bullshit like asymptomatic. You're worrying about Jason, this dude in a hockey mask, chasing this flannel shirt titty woman who keeps looking back as she runs and stumbles all the time. And that is you being evil by pretending that there's this other evil out there that's so much greater than all the evil you might do that you are therefore good. And this math is completely invalid. It's completely invalid. So, how do you do the math of God? How do you do it? Where does it come from? And if you go back to Leibniz, you'll find that, believe it or not, binary, that the language of binary is the maths of God. The creation itself is based off this idea. I wonder if this works. Just hit that button. That idea being 1 plus 1 minus 1 plus 1 minus 1 plus 1 minus 1 plus 1 minus 1. That this, sorry, I need to move this over there. That this formula is a divergence. I'm sorry. Yeah, this is a divergence. That if you were to follow this sequence out mathematically, you would have infinity, either negative or positive. That you would have a constant grow and decay from this eternal substance. 0 and 1. 0 and 1. And that the concept of this is actually more expressly expressed as God is and God is not. God is and God is not. But James, you can never doubt God. And I'm here to tell you that you would not be here if you did not doubt God. That the bellows of God itself, the math of God that makes God work, is this lack of God combined with the presence of God. That system, that mathematical equation creates God that's neither divergent or convergent, but is something else entirely. That this world that we've been trying to understand can only be understood as closely as possible using math, using these concepts, which are, in the evilest word that I use all the time, hypotheticals. That math itself is a hypothetical. And the only reason why it's able to express God is because of how convergence and divergence works. That these are directions or poles of a motor, and that motor would only function on the absence of God. And that you having doubt, you finding yourself and having doubt about the system itself, is transmission fluid that makes this car go, makes this world happen. And that even math expresses that we can do things with formulas that have no end, that we can infinitely say things, we can infinitely say things and express things that can be either divergent or convergent. So what does that mean? When it approaches infinity, or even negative infinity, you have a convergence. It's going somewhere. Even something as simple as like 1/2 plus 1/4 plus 1/8 plus 1/16 ... If you kept doing this math, you would end up with a convergence of 1, not of affinity. That if you added 1/2 to 1/4, right, now you have 3/4. If you added 3/4 to 1/8, now you have 8, 2, 6, 7/8, right? And then if you add 7/8 plus 1/16, you'd be getting closer and closer and closer and closer and closer to 1. But infinite. It's an infinite set that has a convergence of 1. You don't know when it gets to 1, but you know it's getting to 1. Okay? That's a certain kind of convergence. Another kind of convergence would be just infinity convergence, right? 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6, ... If you carried that all the way, you know that has a convergence of infinity, not 1. If you follow that sequence out, it would lead you eventually to infinity. You may never get there, but it has a convergence. It has a vanishing point of 1. All right? So you see that you can have convergence. I need to stop turning that off. You have a convergence of infinity. Something can converge on infinity. Something can converge on 1. Something can converge on negative infinity. Something can converge on negative 1. It's the square root of 2. As you start to solve that, you start to realize, I can't really answer that, but I also can at the same time. That we've just pierced through this reality, and we're looking at 2 different sets. Now, some of you, if I bored you by now and you're already gone, it's okay. Have fun. Enjoy your Monday. It's okay. But there's more to this when you start to look at how this world is built. And one of the fascinating things that Leibniz taught you in philosophy was that math numbers cannot exist by themselves. That math is never 8, math is never 5, math is never 3. Math is always the relationship of 8 to 5, the relationship of 7 to 12. That is the relationship of you with someone else that creates reality. And this self-fullness that you have will always have a convergence to God, to this reality. There are only 6 points in 3-dimensional space. Stop doing that, James. Stop doing that. Ugh, going the wrong way. Damn. There are only 6 points that converge. Sorry. You need 6 points to indicate a space in 3D. Now, you might think you only need 3, right? Well, you just need a X, Y, and Z. But actually, in 3-dimensional space, if you're going to have an actual spatial system, you need 6 points. You don't need 3. And it's the intersection of those 6 points that actually tell you what this is, what this substance is. But wait, there's more. Like ShamWow, there's more. Because these 6 points don't exist without an observer, which is the 7th point. The 7 days of the week. This odd number creates a perfect system multiplied by another dimension. You could call this dimension time. I don't have an issue with that. But it's not really time. It's consciousness. It's witness. That you compile your world in a mathematical formula utilizing the 6 points of where you are and the 7th of your orientation, your center, where you're from. We talked about this a little bit when we discussed the sun, that the sun is the only thing that you can look at in the world that physically brings your eyes pain to stare at. I'm talking about physical. I'm not talking about the emotional pain that you get, but it's physically uncomfortable. There's so much juice there that your eyes have no choice but to want to shut. That this juice is the same wire that runs down your retinal core. Your optic nerve has a blue wire and a red wire. And the blue wire takes you back. And red wire brings you forward. It paints this picture that you have. This orientation is the math of God. It's bringing you this essence of where you are. James, why are you talking about math so much? It's because of this set. Whoops. Because of the symmetry that we have. That when you look at this symmetry, it's not simply a convergence to infinity, which most of us think God is. And that's why we tend to have this room for evil. Because we're looking at this system and we've got it solved that there's nothing bigger than infinity, James. Therefore, anything that's trying to stop infinity must be evil, when in truth, God has always been the expression of both. That just like Leibniz says, it's the number itself doesn't have the truth. That number reveals its truth through its relationship to others, to its world, to its framework. That's a closer system with God. And when you understand that, you start to see that faith isn't something that we have by necessity because we lack concreteness. That faith itself is the physical transmission fluid that makes this work, that makes this system work. And it all happens through convergence and divergence. What does a lung do but converge and diverge? What does a heart do but converge and diverge? That all of the systems that you have at your disposal, even the systems that you are their disposal, life itself, death itself, is a convergence and a divergence. But we have been brought up to believe that the divergence is evil, that there's this part of it that's wrong. And that wrongness only comes from those who cannot accept faith. They need someone in a vestment to tell them that asymptomatic stuff is mumbo jumbo, but it's true, and that the reason why Colin Powell died is because of how selfish you are. And that system can only exist because of so many of us that are willing to believe in this evil force that has nothing to do with us. That we are pulling out this evil in ourselves and packing it into an egregore and giving it life on the shelf and saying, there it is. There's that evil right there. And that clay came from you. It came from that very transmission fluid that runs your system, the convergence and divergence of your own understanding of what's going on. This system manifests itself in the Mandelbrot. You're looking at divergence and convergence in one picture. That every single point that you see on this Mandelbrot set is a mathematical formula based on whether or not a number converged or diverged in a certain place. This point, and this point, I'm going to use the word diverge. Some of you are going to say, well, it could be converge. You'll find that it's actually the same, but these points diverge to 0. These points converge. And the color that they have is based on the amount of steps it took to converge, to reach that this entire expression is faith and non-faith together. That this entire system that you're looking at is the presence and lack of God together sewn into one. And that your feeling that God does not exist in the world is precisely what you need to find him, because the sequence that you will emit along the way will have to follow the math and bring you back home. That if you say God does exist, and then you say God does not exist, and then you say that God does exist, and then you say that God does not exist, and then you say that God does exist, and then you say that God does not exist, is an infinite set. And that infinite set would be nothing if you simply said one side's good and one side's evil. And that you would die. You would die right here. You would have to create another system to relate. And that system would be, you would have to create a hypothetical 0 to compensate for the real 0 that was built into God the whole time. And this hypothetical 0 will drain you like a sieve. You will end up like Colin Powell, feeling as selfless as he could as he converges and diverges into this infinite truth of who and what we truly are. If you do the math of God, let's do it now. Let's see. Let's do it now. How do I clear this? Is that clear? Yes. Still there? Postulate 1. Let's see. Math of God. Uh-oh. Come on, give me my pen back. Math o God. Postulate 1. God is all powerful. Okay. Postulate 2. If God is good, all of his power must be used for good. God is all powerful and God is good. So where do you get with that math? Number 3, all things that happen to me, that happen under his authority, under his number, are good. They're good. That's simple math. Wow, look at my handwriting. I didn't realize. Yeah, that's really bad. God is all powerful. 1. God is all good. 2. Therefore, everything that happens within God's system must be good too. But James, there's evil in the world. And this is the thoughts that allowed me to find God closer, is because I did the math and I started to look at this. And I heard the story about Satan. Well, God is all powerful and he's all good. And the one he trusted the most, his discernment, the sharpest discernment he ever had, was about his trust for Satan. And God was wrong. That this theism idea believes that God was wrong. That he trusted Satan so much and Satan let him down. And that's setting up this idea that God made a mistake. That God saw something and didn't say it. Well, and now you're going to run it. Oh, well, James, so Satan is pure evil and he did betray God, but God knew he would betray him. And I'm telling you, it would be impossible for God to be betrayed by something that he was letting happen anyway. It's impossible. It's impossible. The math doesn't add up. But what does add up is that God is all powerful. Therefore, anything that happens under his realm is, number 2, also good. So how can Satan and Lucifer be good? And it's the same reason why a greenhouse technician can be good by chopping strawberries, by chopping old growth, by pruning. It's the exact same reasons. That the reason why that strawberry is able to better itself under the greenhouse is because it has a lack and a presence. A lack and a presence of nutrients, of resources, of love. That these systems that we have built in go beyond the realms of pain, what we call pain, that go beyond the realms of this notion that we have about right or wrong. We carry this notion of objective right-wrong. We got that from our schools. Schools had to sell you the idea that objective morality comes from outside yourself, so they could be the ones to install what it is. And that's culture. When I say they, I'm talking about the fashion of culture itself. That culture, in order for it to survive, would need to lie to all the chicks, all the little chickies, so that they would believe that morality has to come from somewhere else. And this is a beautiful transaction. It's a beautiful product transaction, because you, who've already decided that the evil Hottentot is outside of yourself as you traffic your children and mutilate their genitals and sign them off as tax assets. But no, none of that counts because of how evil this other person is. That fits. That this notion of an objective exterior morality that comes from outside of you really, really rides tandem with that idea. And that nothing could be further apart from God. That you abandoning yourself to this state, to this preacher, to Colin Powell, to who, to a political party, are getting as far away from God as you can possibly be. Yet we call them the godful ones. We call them the righteous. And that same righteousness didn't learn in Vietnam, didn't learn in Korea, didn't learn in World War I, World War II, didn't learn in the Civil War, didn't learn in the Falkland Islands, didn't learn over and over and over and over again. Because that system doesn't work. It's not going to work because it's too profitable. That's why. There's a difference. We think work means less pain. But work means progress. These are different terms. But we've been able to screw them up because they serve us to. That's why. They literally serve us to. But God is so much bigger than that. That the darkness you find in God is completely encapsulated with the pulsing red lifeblood, with the essence of finding it, that there is no possible way inside this Mandelbrot set to leave God's arms, because you are completely surrounded. Even though you're deep in the darkness, you are surrounded by the math of God. And that your job may be something different than obedience. That your job may be an endowin, torch carrier. That the one in the tribe who carried the torch at night was the honorary position. They were the giver of light to all their tribe. They were the Luciferus, the one that rose in the morning and showed everyone a golden dawn that was coming. Was this person selfless? Or was Nandawin self-full? Do you come back from a vision quest feeling self-full or selfless? These systems that we have in place serve the fashion of society. They don't serve God. They don't serve the greater good. They don't even serve right or wrong. They serve the fashion of society. And we will only learn through our darkness. We will only learn through coming out of this darkness into who we are. And that darkness requires faith. It doesn't require a promise. It's not an insurance policy from God. Think about it. Why doesn't God just sell insurance? Why doesn't God just sell everyone an insurance policy? And you know what he does if you go to the Catholic Church, but you're going to have to get a vaccine. You're going to have to be selfish until you do. And you're going to have to hear him tell you, oh, does God talk to you but not me? Because God talked to me and he told me that you needed to change your life, is what he says. When does that preacher talk about himself? When does that preacher explain to you his own strife, his own journey to the desert, to the wilderness when it came to vaccines? Most of you are on that journey right now. You're blistering in the sun because the truth burns like a motherfucker and we don't have the fashion of each other to find shade. Sure, we find pockets of it, but we're surrounded by this false hypothetical belief, not in good, but in one, that this is a belief in the number one and the rejection of the number zero. Oh, no wonder you can't see it because it's a red pen. That to believe in one and to reject the zero is to miss God. That half of God is gone. That God is both of these things, which means God is the darkest dark you've ever seen. And in that darkness, we will always converge because there's no other place to go. There's no other place to go except for that fractal waiting for you. So it's good. And this lack of knowing is good. And the less of us believe that everything is known, the more freedom you're going to have to explore yourself. But the more everyone else is convinced everything's all figured out, and asymptomatic is now a logical term, the harder it's going to be to keep that. And that's why you see even truthers turning on truthers right now. Because we don't want answers, we want comfort. And that's what QAnon was. It was a comfort movement. It got me too. It's a very valuable movement. If I was like a P1-esque billionaire, I would be playing these merry pranksters on you. I would. I'd be doing whatever it could to get you to take your clutches off the number one and start looking at that zero again. Start realizing that that's how this motor works, that you can infinitely converge, not in one, but in the subtraction and multiplication, in addition, subtraction and addition, subtraction and addition of one. That's how you build a state machine. That's how you build this place. that it wouldn't work any other way. All right, it's 12:02. You guys have a beautiful day. Take care of yourselves and each other. Hopefully we'll survive this next week, and then we can start going into... I can't wait to show you this stuff, but I need at least 2 strikes. I need at least 1 chance to get that wrong. So it should be next Monday when that happens. Take care of yourself. Remember the Alamo. And yeah, I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. Have that conversation with God. Because most of you had a quasi-conversation with God. You were sitting there while someone else was telling you what God was and what it was like, and you took that to be a conversation with God. But you can have that conversation. You can ask him what's right and what's wrong. You can ask him, should I be selfless? Is selfless really helping my community? Ask God that. Or does being selfless turn community into a selfless being that thrives and lives and sanctifies selfless? And am I truly helping someone by encouraging them to be selfless? Or is that how we got here? Is that what led to this position, this vector that we're in right now, right? Think about it. Doubt. I think God's going to love you more that you doubted him while you were here a little bit. I don't think he's going to be very impressed with the person that comes in like a brown noser saying, nope, I never once questioned you, not once the entire time. I knew the whole time everything was... No. That's a kiss ass. I don't think God's here to raise kiss asses. They would have had that a long time ago. When they built the pyramids, there were plenty of kiss ass. A lot of it. In fact, it was the people who left the pyramid, who left this fiat system, who left this Colin Powell asymptomatic world to wander out in the wilderness and find themselves. And the only way you would survive as a conspiracy theorist is to be full of self, because otherwise you would fall into the fashion of that peer pressure and say, yeah, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I'll just listen to Colin Powell because that dude really fucking knows what's going on. There's nothing asymptomatic about it, is there? All right, guys. Where's this off button? Oh, it's right here. Outro. Take care.